All right, so this should look familiar from Monday. This is my rough and ready guide to developing strength. A couple semesters of exercise science crammed into a semi-sophisticated chart that looks like a child drew it. The horizontal lines represent the three main ways that you can build strength: tempo, load or weight or pressure, and direction, which is mainly broken down into eccentric, going down, lengthening, as in the muscles and the tendons are lengthening, and then concentric, shortening, going back up. That's about it. That's pretty much strength development in a nutshell. So, in terms of safety, that's the left end, slow, light, eccentric. In terms of maximal development of athletic quality, that's the opposite end, fast, heavy, concentric. And depending on where you are on these spectrums, your body adapts primarily one type of tissue over another. So how you use these scales determines what you're working on and how. Over here on the far left, the slow light eccentric side, we've got neurofascia, your nerves and your fascia. We're trying to reduce pain, restore balance and coordination, and regain control over misfiring muscle chains. Like, for example, when most people squat, they come into this program, when they squat, their butts don't turn on. It's the damnedest thing. They've got floppy butts in a squat, which is a butt-driven mechanic, but we see it all the time. This is neurofascial work, and the slow light eccentric gives you the right pace and the right load and the right direction to start remaking those connections right off the bat. And as you do it, you're lubricating the fascia and breaking through all the different little knots and scar tissue buildups and all the little weird little spaces. You feel them crack, pop, slip. You hear crepitus as you're moving through them. That's your fascia reorganizing in real time. And as your muscles are firing that you haven't fired in a while, Karen, like, oh, that woke up some things. Yeah, that's the whole point of slow light eccentric, or it's at least half the point, is to start restoring those motor neuron connections that have learned inhibition. They have learned guarding. They have learned, oh, I'm traumatized from a previous injury. We're not moving there anymore. And you think that means damage. A lot of time it actually just means wrong signal. So you move slow, light, and eccentric, and you can start turning those signals from off to on again. As you do that, you generate fatigue, lubricates the neurofascia, rebalances the whole system. That's the gift of slow light eccentric, but that's hardly where it stops. You also have actual damage. You also have thinning tendons, Swiss cheese ligaments, torn up menisci, thinned out, worn out cartilage. You also have muscle atrophy because those joint tissues are so weak that you've once again learned that inhibition that gives you, that takes away the load that life is supposed to put on you in order to maintain your muscle mass. So what do? You can go a little bit faster, you can go a little bit heavier, and you can shift your focus from eccentric over to concentric to actually enter the hypertrophic zone. Hypertrophic is the fancy word for growing new tissue. You can do all the slow light eccentric work you want and do tons of great neurofascial work, but you will never fill in the holes in your tendons and ligaments. You will never rethicken and fill in a tear on a meniscus, and you will never pump your muscles back up unless you start going down the spectrum. And the first one to be is the most important one, or sorry, the first most important one to start working on is loading, weight, heavier, make it heavier first. Once you can sustain enough heavy weight to create a hypertrophic signal, and you'll know that as your strength improves, then you can start making a little bit faster or applying more concentric focus direction. This increases the force alongside the weight that you're generating in your movements, and that increases the hypertrophic signal. But the safest way to start that is to continue going slow and focusing eccentric and just make that heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. And if you make it heavy enough, you'll push yourself into the hypertrophic zone where you're actually creating new tissue. You're not really creating new tissue over at slight low eccentric. You're working out the kinks. Once you've got enough kinks worked out, then you have to start making them heavier. Same movements, just heavier if you want to start filling in the gaps. Work out the kinks, fill in the gaps. And then you're still not done. If you want to go past normal function and filling in all of your damage and into the realm of athletics, now you really start having to push it into much faster, much heavier, and much more concentrically focused. Muscle shortening, that's explosive, upward movement. That's how we sprint. That's how we jump. The eccentric is how we land, receiving force. But the concentric is the force generator and giver. You're putting force into the ground or wherever you're taking off from. So that's what Q and B is here. This represents quality of movement. That's speed, that's power, that's agility. That's the upper end, high level Ferrari stuff, right? This is where we're translating our newly balanced neurofascia and our better firing motor chains and our filled in gaps in muscle and connective tissue atrophy. We're taking all of that strength that we've built, that progress, and we're translating it into higher order movement. The only way to do that is to move it faster or much heavier, or switch over to a pure concentric focus, a more pure concentric focus. And then we've got B over here. This is our final tissue class, bone. You can remodel neurofascia. You can create new connective tissue and muscle. But the only way you're going to undergo osteogenesis, which is the creation of new bone tissue, is to, again, start pushing the far ends of these scales, especially heavy first. Out at close to your maximal weight bearing or moving capacity is where you can generate the signal for osteogenesis. So when people come to me with osteoporosis, which happens all the time, and ask me, what can we do? Tell them the same thing I tell the rest of you. We're going to start you slow, light, eccentric to get your movements under control. And then we're going to start trying to load it heavier and heavier and heavier, because bearing heavy loads is the only thing that creates new bone. Other than some incredible medicines that are coming out that actually do seem to assist in this process, but they can't fully replace it unless you just want to be on pills for the rest of your life. If you want to keep that increased bone mass via medication, you have to start applying heavy loads to it. That's the only thing that tells the body, hey, I need new bone. Our body is mechanosensitive, meaning it responds to its mechanical environment. If its mechanical environment is never made to bear heavy weight, it does not need all this bone. It'll put resources into other things. But if it does have to bear heavy weight frequently, oh, I do need all this bone and maybe a little more. So that's strength in a nutshell. From slow, light, eccentric over to fast, heavy, concentric, we work through the different tissue classes. And this isn't an on or off type of a thing. When you're over here at fast, heavy, concentric, you're getting all of these benefits. It's just concentrating more and more towards quality of movement and bone creation. But you're still getting muscle growth and connective tissue growth. You're still getting neurofascial rebalancing. But you still have to go through these phases first, because even though this is where the biggest promise is, this is also the place where you're most likely to what? Pop quiz.
Get hurt.
Re-injured.
Injured.
That's right. That's right. That's how people like Coach end up with all of their hard-won knowledge. Because athletes, especially male athletes in dynamic sports, tend to get so preoccupied with the far right end of things that this is where basically all of your training is. And that's a good way to destroy a high-end sports car by the late 20s, which is about where I was at. Late 20s, early 30s. I'd done so much of this and not enough of this anymore. I was actually really smart as a teenager. I actually built up really well instinctively. But then I got into my dynamic sports, and then especially parkour, and I just wanted to be faster, bigger, faster, stronger, more technical, more amazing, and just crash the car into a ditch about a dozen times. Forced me to start all over again. But I'm also never going to stop being over here. The evolution of my practice has been relearning how to push more and more and more of my practice to the far right end without crashing again. And that means I always have to be doing these. These are still a constant, but can I get to a place where this starts to predominate again? And how long can I keep it there before the next breakdown? That's the game I'm playing now. I'm happy to report I'm doing pretty good. Haven't had a crash in a while. Never know. There's the old strength chart. Thoughts?